We have big news in the golf world. This is Garbage Time Takes on golf. Dennis, our resident golf expert, check out his article that he wrote on the Masters a while back. If you haven't already, it was very good. He's been slacking a little bit with his other articles, but I'm sure Dennis has got something in the
because
works.
he doesn't want to cover the real golf league that's now around.
Correct. Correct. Perhaps Dennis will turn this segment into a bit of an article. Who knows? But Dennis, Cam Smith, number two golfer in the world, is reportedly signing with LIV Golf for 100 milli. He's said he's worried about playing in the PGA playoffs right now, so he has no comment. But it seems to be pretty much a done deal that Cam Smith is going to jump ship and go to LIV Golf. So the floor is yours as our resident golf expert, Dennis. What is your take on not only Cam Smith going to LIV Golf, but also, maybe just a little bit about LIV Golf and your thoughts on that in general, now that they've pretty much been playing tournaments for about a month now?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on LIV Golf. Me and Bobby would just discuss this at length, and maybe it'll turn into maybe we'll get a debate episode up or something eventually, because there's a lot to talk through with this. For anybody who doesn't know, not as familiar with the golf world, LIV Golf is a new golf series that has sprung up over the last. It's really been going on now for the last 7-8 months. It's been in the works for longer than that, but people really started talking about it as PGA Tour players have signed with them over the last 7-8 months, increasingly so. Kind of started all when former PGA pro and near legend Greg Norman decided to be CEO of this league. So he's kind of the face of the league. And then there's a lot of stuff that happened with Phil Mickelson, people might remember, talking about his decision to leave the PGA Tour and go play for LIV Golf. Players like Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, Louis Oosthuizen, a lot of the big names around golf have decided to leave the PGA Tour, which has been kind of the primary method for professional golf. The primary route to the top of the golf world is for years and years and years has been the PGA Tour. And I think there's some good things that I'll start, I guess, with the good things that I think have come out of LIV. It's provided some competition for the tour that it's needed for a while. The PGA Tour has had this sort of monopoly on the best golf players in the world for way too long, and it has allowed them to be, I don't know if lazy is maybe a little aggressive, but it's allowed them to do things in a way that was, their changes have been slow. They haven't,
They're
worked
complacent.
really hard. Been complacent. Complacent is a perfect word. They haven't worked really hard to expedite changes that have been needed for years, and this has caused them to start to try to do that. It may be a little too late at this point, with all of the big names that we're now seeing jumping ship. But Cam Smith is a big domino to fall, and I, as a golf fan, hate to see it, because as a golf fan, I would love to see a world where the best players in the world compete against the rest of the best players in the world, and that's what we've had for years on the PGA Tour. Now it looks like, at least during the tour season, outside the majors, you're going to have this sort of split going on where some of the best players are with LIV, some of the best players are with the PGA Tour, and that's kind of just disappointing because it kind of makes it hard to direct your attention to a specific tour and really dive in as a fan. So overall, I think it's, from a fan's experience, at least from my experience, a negative thing. There's also, a big political side to the LIV Tour that I won't get too much into here, but to try to keep things a little briefer. But the whole tour is basically financed by the Saudi Arabian government, and so there's a lot of controversy over some of the ethical issues that the Saudi Arabian government has been associated with in the past, and their sort of attempt through this tour to, I honestly don't even know what their end goal is, not normalize their country in the world. So I guess it's disappointing for me to see some of the best players leave the PGA Tour. I think it has promoted some competition. I think it could have been done in a better way. But and I guess I'll close with this. I'll close with another positive. I think that some of the ways that the LIV Tour is actually conducting the tournaments is interesting. There's 4-man teams, and I think it's like the top 3 teams, or the top 3 teams scores from each team count for like the team score, and there's like different team prizes. They've kind of set it up like F1, and where there's like this individual component, there's also a team component, there's also a shotgun start, which I think is pretty fun because that means all the players have completed more or less the same number of holes at a given time, and the tournament's actually each day is much shorter. Whereas you have staggered tee times in the PGA Tour, you have guys teeing off at 7 a.m. all the way through like 1 p.m. and you have golf all day long, which in its own respect is cool, but everyone's on these different number of holes. And from a viewer's perspective, that part of it is actually fun and interesting, and would be, I mean, if everybody jumps ship, I will probably be watching some of the LIV Tour, but I'm fighting against it with everything that I have in my bones.
Yeah, I haven't actually watched any of the LIV events myself. I think for me, the shotgun start is really interesting because the nice thing about, even though it is, really long with the staggered starts that PGA has, you sort of are able to feel like the buildup. Whether you're starting at 1 or 9, you get around to that 16th, 17th, 18th hole, especially on Sunday's championships, you always know where it's going to end. You know where the trouble is, you know where the pressure is. And for me, with the LIV Golf, I feel like you probably lose a little bit of that because someone starts on hole 5 and ends on, hole 4, their pressure isn't the same as walking up that 18th green, even though it's their 18th hole. And then the other thing is, you have, with the shotgun start, all of your golfers are always on the course. So it almost, for me, would be hectic to have like just bouncing around from player to player to player, when with the PGA setup, it's sort of like, you have your leaders, you're able to focus on your leaders, and then if someone else hits a cool shot, you tune into that. But really your focus is on like the main groups, whereas, with LIV, you'll have like shot from maybe some guy who's in like 40th place and then jump back to your second place guy because they're all playing at once. So I feel like it might be a little hard to appreciate each shot in its respective moment because I feel like you sort of lose like the atmosphere of like coming up those final 4 holes, seeing the leaderboard, 2 guys in a group or 1 guy sitting in the clubhouse waiting to see how it's going to play out. All of those things I feel like you kind of miss out on with LIV. I, for one, think the PGA needs to get its head out of its arse and start paying its players more. There's no reason why their prize pools are so low. They have, I think, plenty of advertising and sponsors. Some of the biggest like corporations in the world are sponsoring their golf events. Why are they not able to provide more in their prize pools to their top players when, your first overall prize money for winning the Open is like 12th place on LIV Golf Tour? It's the money thing like isn't fun to talk about, but it's also like a huge deal. Like, yes, you could argue that like, do guys really need $100 million to live off of? Like, do they really? But at the same time, they deserve to be compensated at the level that's been set by like golf, and LIV's raising the standards. So I think if PGA doesn't want to get left in the dust, and if you have more competitive players joining LIV Golf, it could get interesting once this sort of, I'll call it the regime of like, I won't call them golf purists, but maybe golf traditionalists, guys like Rory, guys like JT, who are sort of loyal to the PGA because that's what gave them their start. In 6-7 years, there's going to be a new wave of guys who are going to be the face of golf, and there's no guarantee that they feel that they need to stay loyal to the PGA because that's what gave them their start. If LIV signs them, they're able to take off from there. So I think, unless the Live Golf Tour folds, the PGA could be in trouble here in the next couple years as some of their more prominent faces get older, get a little less competitive. And those guys who are really gunning for the top are playing Live Golf because they don't have to worry about, you know, scoring well or playing enough matches on tour to be able to keep their card. They can go over to Live Golf, play whenever they want, make a bunch of money, and then come over and play for the majors. So, um, certainly a very interesting time in the world of golf. Also, congratulations on a great career to Sir Nick Faldo.
Yes, definitely congratulations to Sir Nick Faldo. Um, I think you definitely have a good point with the PGA kind of getting its act together. I was listening to a full interview with Jay Monahan, which is the basically the PGA commissioner, a couple weeks ago. It might have even been like a month or two ago now, and they were talking about, he was announcing some of the plans for next season. And this kind of goes to your point about the money thing. They're announcing pretty significant increases to the purses for a lot of their events next year and moving forward beyond that. And I thought it was logical that one reporter asked the question, okay, that's great, but like, where was this money before? Kind of like, why wasn't it being used before? And, Jay gave some sort of answer of like, oh, like all of our sponsors really want to help and like, or like really supporting of us. And they've increased, like sponsorship value, and the rest of it's from reserves. It's like, okay, but it was probably coming out of Jay Monahan's check salary. But so I thought that was quite an interesting thing to come out of the interview, and kind of leads me even further to believe, like the PGA Tour is going to start trying to do things that it should have been doing for a while. And one of those is compensating its players more for playing the highest level of the game that there is. And I hope that that's a strategy that works out for them, and players still want to compete in order to win their money rather than being handed a check for showing up like they get on the LIV Tour, which is one of the things about it that frustrates me. But I don't know if it could be a too little too late, if I'm being honest. Because like you said, Derek, some of the more traditional golf names that have really been backing the PGA, it seems like they're getting fewer and fewer. And there's a new wave of golfers could potentially, I mean, they're definitely willing to shift things. Which direction? Don't know.
Bob, any thoughts on Live Golf? Do you disavow Saudi Arabia?
Sure. I don't know a whole lot about Saudi Arabia particularly, but I do know that they've had their transgressions in the past, and that certainly cannot be ignored.
No.
However, I do, looking at the golf leagues, separately as much as I can from that situation. I think the only thing that the PGA has right now that's a lot that really is keeping it primary in terms of Live Golf is the TV deals. If Live Golf secures a TV deal, I think you might just see a sinking of the PGA Tour, and that's unfortunate. But I think it's just the fact of the matter. When you have a league that's willing to pay way more than the PGA Tour has ever dreamed of just for showing up, and that's the thing with sports like golf or more individualized sports. It's that a lot of them are based on how much you individually win is how much you get paid. And when you can secure a contract just, kind of like, football or basketball, where it's just if you play, you get paid, not if you win, you get paid, it's hard to compete. So you've got one problem in that aspect where the PGA really doesn't have that going for it at all. They don't really have that system in place at all. But also when you have way more money than even the player, if they did win at the PGA level, offered to you in a contract just for showing up, you're going to have trouble on your hands right out of the bat if you're the PGA. And, like Dennis brought up, or it might have been you, Derek, I forget, but, in a few years, when the new wave has come in, and LIV is offering $2-3 million checks to newbies that are climbing through the ranks just to show up. I mean, it's gonna be a tough out. But I will say that the golf that the PGA does have this going for it. It's got the TV deals already in place right now, and in more in golf than really any other sport that I've ever experienced. And maybe this is only true to a certain extent. I feel like people just watch golf more because people play golf. They're like, hey, I play golf. I'm not very good, but I just want to see the best players play. I don't really care. I know some names, but I don't really care who wins that much. I'll just kind of root for a guy if I see him that I think I like. There's not really as many hardcore like players that you root for in golf as there is in like many other sports. And because of that means that if big name players, sure, those are the players that most likely have the most following and fans, but if those players leave, you still got, you can have a decent crowd of guys, which the PGA still has, and people are still going to tune in because they really don't care as much about the players' brands, because there's not as many golfers that have brands as players than there are in basically every other sports league. It's just, can I see high quality golf? And the PGA offers relatively high quality golf, and it always has. So people keep tuning in. However, that will continue if that gap in quality continues to grow between LIV and PGA, which by all accounts as of right now, it's in a landslide, especially when you got number 2 overall golfer right now signing with LIV Golf. You have bigger names, like all the guys that you just named that are signing with LIV Golf. Those are all the guys I know from golf. I can barely name you like 5 more names of golfers that I know that are on the PGA. Like Brooks Koepka, he was my favorite current golfer. Now he plays for LIV. So what am I supposed to do? He was like the only guy that I actually rooted for. So, when you've put that into perspective, the PGA needs to get its act together. It needs to get its act together fast because, like I said, if LIV Golf goes mainstream, which, that the political elements and, the fact that it's a new league are working against that. But if it does go mainstream with a TV deal or something like that, and people can get their eyes on it, it's going to be trouble.
I think you bring up a really good point with something that PGA Tour has going for it, and I hadn't thought about that, but you're completely right. People, including me, tune in because they want to watch good golf. Like, sure, some people are Roy fans, Spieth fans, like you get some of that, but like I've gone to a few PGA tournaments, and you're there for the experience. When you're watching on TV, but especially when you're there in person, it is an experience being able to walk around the course, see some of the different guys play different shots. And it's not like I'm not following, some people probably do. I'm not following Rory every single hole if he's in like the 10th to last group just because I love Rory. Like I might follow him a few holes, but I'm trying to experience the event and just see good golf. And you get that sentiment from a lot of fans there. It's like, and pretty much anybody makes a birdie or an eagle or you see a really good shot, everybody goes crazy for that person. Like there's not a lot of diehards that are rooting against guys. Like you don't see a lot of guys rooting against players on the tour.
Golf's biggest villain is gone. Golf's biggest villain is in LIV. Bryson.
Agreed. Oh. Yeah, Bryson, yeah. That was a whole other thing. Definitely. But yeah, I think you guys both bring up some pretty good points. And
but all the players that seem to have any sort of brand though, they've gone to LIV. And it makes a lot of sense. And we didn't mention it, but Tiger got that massive LIV offer as well, which he turned down. And Dennis, maybe you and I'll have another debate on that because I know we're on other ends of the spectrum on that issue, on specifically with Tiger. But when anybody with a brand is folding to LIV, just for the fact of the matter is if you're in any sort of, because the thing is, by the time you've built up a brand in golf, you normally had a short-term amount of success, and then once people have like their peak in golf, it seems like they have a flash of like 1 year of greatness, 2 years of greatness, and then it's just like they're always around, but they never reach that same form. And so once you reach that point, like sure, when you're at that point, it's more profitable being a PGA golfer maybe, but the security of being a LIV golfer, especially when you're, when you've already made a name for yourself, you've already got brand deals. You've already got, the Callaways are sponsoring you. The Titleists are already behind you. Who cares at that point? I mean, you'll just take the check to show up. You'll play pretty well because, you'll just play for the fun of the game and play to win. You could still secure sponsorships by playing with LIV. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I don't know. The PGA needs to do a better job, I think, of marketing the guys it has, because that's another thing that they don't do at all, is they don't really market their players. It's just kind of who's hot this week, we'll put them on the face.
I think you bring up another good point there, actually, because this is a trend I've noticed, and that's why I think Cam Smith is a particularly slippery slope, because he's one of the more young, up-and-coming, really strong golfers. And, yeah, there's been a few, but a lot of the guys that have deferred to LIV recently are of that category of they've made their rise to fame, in Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson. I even throw Brooks and Bryson in that category because they have not been playing good golf recently. I think that, in terms of their playing careers, they've hit their peaks. And Patrick Reed, you got those guys are the guys that are leaving for LIV. They're the big names because they've made it before, but they're not the best players in the world right now. It's the young guys. It's the Cam Smiths. You've got Scotty Scheffler in that group. Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa. The list goes on, and those guys have been more or less staying with PGA Tour. There's a few exceptions, but a lot of the guys that have deferred to LIV have kind of what I would consider going over that peak. And it makes a lot of sense to then, break in the money, because I don't have to then compete against the 20-something-year-olds that are probably going to kick my butt most weeks on the PGA Tour, just because, there's a lot of talent in the game of golf right now. I'm not saying those guys couldn't compete. They can, but why risk it when I could just collect a paycheck for showing up and playing on the LIV Tour? So,
however, if anyone did have a fandom, those were the guys that they probably were rooting for. And that's just the flip side of the coin.
Yeah,
just because they were the brands. They are the names that people know, even if they're not an avid follower of the game.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is, those brands can linger beyond a player's
no doubt
in golf. Like you were talking about, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka. Like, even though I'm sitting here saying that they've crossed their peak, those are the names people know.
Yes,
and that's the important thing about it.
Yeah. One last thing to wrap up. I thought Bob's greatest point was the casual golf fan, just a guy who goes out, maybe plays a couple holes here and there. They tune in for, they don't care who wins, but they just want to see,
shots they couldn't hit.
16th, 17th, 18th hole. Is this guy going to do it or not? Is the guy waiting in the clubhouse? Is he going to pull it off? And for me especially, I'll always root for Tiger. But, outside of that, all I want to see at the end is, great shots and, the pressure of those final three holes and just seeing what the heck happens. But yeah, great discussion there on LIV Golf. Dennis, do you disavow Saudi Arabia? Do you disavow?
100%.
Yeah, 100% disavow. This is a disavow of Saudi Arabia podcast.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. We stand for, what's right and morals.